Welcome to the Psytelligence Podcast. This is our first episode, and we're excited to feature Matt Zemon, author of Psychedelics for Everyone. We can kick off a little bit by just telling us about yourself, who you are, the work that you're doing. So please.
On all of the above, and I also wanted to say thank you for Psytelligence. I think what you're doing here and getting that information out is important, and I think the way you're doing it, it seems you're spending clearly a lot of time and effort to make it as clean, easy to read, accessible as it is.
Thank you.
So I appreciate that. Yeah. So Eric. I'm probably not your typical person that you interview because in some ways I have nothing to sell or offer your audience. What I do is I try to provide um, factual information that allows people to make whatever decision they feel they need to make from a variety of approaches. So I talk to some people who are approaching psychedelics from kind of a medical model, and they're looking for information on like, how can I get legal ketamine and what types of questions do I ask those practitioners and so on. Other people I talk to are more of the decrim mindset, and their approach is, hey, I'm an adult, and no one should tell me what nature I can put in my body. Everything should be legal, and I get that. I respect that. And then I spend a lot of time in the spiritual communities. Um, I am an executive director of a church here in North Carolina. And I talk with them about psychedelics and it is a religious freedom issue, which is also, I think, hugely important to understand. And I believe all three of those groups, it's an and everybody can work better together. So I do this through, I have a book, Psychedelics for Everyone. I have a preparation and integration journal called Beyond the Trip. And then I'm just trying to get good information out there.
Nice, excellent. And so tell us a little bit more in depth about your book. The title, the focus, how it's gaining traction out there, how you hope it helps the world.
Yeah, so Psychedelics for Everyone, the idea is to get your attention. I certainly do not mean that everyone should take a psychedelic. There are definitely people who have different medications that they're already taking, maybe different over-the-counter supplements, or have a family or personal history that does not make them a good candidate. What I do hope that people can do when they read Psychedelics for Everyone is look at this and say, is this a good fit for me? Is it a good fit for someone I love? Or might it just impact the way I vote in an upcoming election? Is it good for society? My personal opinion is they're good for society. But hopefully when people read this book, they can make that decision for themselves. The book itself starts off with 4 personal stories. It moves into kind of psychedelics as a whole. What are they? How do they work? And then it goes into a variety of different psychedelic medicines one at a time, talks about what are they, how do they work, what does the research say, and then also has a chapter on microdosing for those who are interested in that. And then the second book, Beyond the Trip, is really focused on the preparation that people do ahead of a psychedelic journey, so the intention setting and resource gathering, and then the integration work following. So there's 4 weeks of homework, there's 30 days of gratitude journaling, and then there's even activities you can do while during the ceremony or the medical experience, depending on what you are, how you're encountering your psychedelics.
Wonderful. So would you say your role is um, as much an educator as an advocate? What's the interplay there?
I think it's both, Eric. I'm just a human trying to connect with other humans, and I think I've been able to do a decent amount of research and personal exploration, and I'm just trying to share that with those who want to hear about it.
Absolutely. With your subject matter expertise, I think it's interesting. You brought up an interesting topic, which is, the marketing or commercial aspect, the religious, the science. And one of the things that Psytelligence we're really curious about is, either complementary or evolutionary models that work with the existing structures of capitalism, but then, try to advance them to increase equity, and to even use, I think, some of the potential, insights from psychedelics to make a better economic model. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think all models are as good as the hearts of the people who are using them. So, is there a role for capitalism in this marketplace? Of course there is. Of course there is. And for the companies that you're reporting on, for them to be successful, they need to have enough energy. So let's take out the word money for a moment. Just talk about as energy. They need to have enough energy to move forward. Um, and what they're offering is energy exchange. They're offering different products, services, education, in exchange for energy from the people who are using those products, services, and education. Um, so I think it's important that whether it's again medical, religious, decrim, that there is a marketplace for people to consume these items. Um, I find it it is exciting that hang on, let me try it this way. Are there challenges with the capitalism period? Sure, of course there are. Are we going to solve those during the during this exact period that we're in? No, we're going to continue to work towards solving those. So I think psychedelics, um, the fact that it can do so much good, needs to be out there, and these different models all working together are important ways to do it. I do have one more quick thing I can say here, if you don't mind, Eric.
Please.
What's I find fascinating is that in the old days, when we talk about the psychedelic heritage,
Mhm.
the role of priest and doctor was one role.
Mhm.
In our Western society, it's two roles, and understandably so. The challenge as it comes with psychedelics, with a medicine that is different, then there is no cure. These are
Mhm.
catalysts, these are connecting points, these are tools and technologies of deep exploration. Well, the challenge we have is if we say, well, these should belong only to the spiritual people, well, it would be fair to say, well, they don't have the knowledge of the human body and human mind like the medical people do. Okay, fair enough. But if we were to say conversely that, okay, that these psychedelics only belong in the medical world, it would, I think, be fair to argue that, well, they don't have, in most cases, the spiritual knowledge of where people sometimes go with these psychedelic experiences.
Mhm.
So I'm an advocate for a medical spiritual reconciliation, that there is a way for the medical world to adopt some of the spiritual best practices, and there's a way for the spiritual world to adopt some of the medical best practices. And if we can work together, we can find a way to treat and to help as many people as possible, both in their religious exploration as well as attending to some of these challenges that they're affected by.
Thank you. That's thought provoking, and it makes me think that there's been a lot of interest recently in the palliative care sector.
Mhm.
Do you feel like that's an area where there might be room for that connection to develop?
Yeah, it's almost a natural handoff. I mean, doctors are kind of by definition about curing, about finding a solution. And then when they can no longer cure, when someone dies, they hand them over to the priest, do the last rites. Well, we're talking about terminal illness palliative care. We are on, there's nothing that's being done to change the prognosis. At least that's my understanding. So what we're doing is, how do we ensure comfort? How do we have a better death experience? And it seems like it's a natural. And the research Johns Hopkins is showing with psychedelics and palliative care, when it's when we don't have 14 weeks to find out if an antidepressant works, and we want immediate relief of depression and anxiety symptoms, great, psychedelics might be a very useful tool for that realm. In addition, though, moving beyond depression and anxiety, for those same people, the idea that life is beyond our human experience, and that they might be able to know that in a way that they haven't thus far in their lives, or be able to feel it in a way that they haven't felt it, that's really important. And then finally, when you're talking about palliative care, how are they going to live that last chapter of their lives? How are they going to experience their family? How is their family going to experience them? I could see psychedelics having a role not just for the person in the active state of dying, but for the entire family. And I think all of this needs to be looked at, and is so exciting. What an amazing time to be alive, Eric.
Yeah, that's really exciting, and thanks for exploring that direction. And I want to pull back more broadly to your book and the work. What do you think is going best about the book? What's going well right now?
I've been just frankly shocked at just how many people have downloaded and purchased this book and the audiobook. That was one that I had no idea that so many people listened to books. But it's amazing. I mean, it's thousands and thousands of people downloading this, they're purchasing this book one way or the other. What I am hoping that people find, what I really tried, much more so than even this conversation, what I tried doing this book is to lay out the facts, either things that I wrote or brought in other experts, then had them medically reviewed on top of that, so that people can read it and trust the information and not find it too technical that you need a medical background to read it. No, that's not the case. Not too opinionated. Let's just try to get, this is how they work. This is the research, what they said it's good. The research says it's bad. And then not too woo-woo. In this particular book, I really didn't dive deep into the spiritual realm. It was much more so, this is what's happening as it relates to symptoms and as it relates to the ways people typically approach psychedelics, until they actually get into it and say, oh, well, wait, there's something more here.
Nice. And what do you think the effect of those people connecting with the book is?
Oh, what I'm hoping, Eric, is it's more conversations like this that I think that people start. Um, I think hopefully when the people read the book, they say, okay, I get it. This can help me, or this can help this person I know, or yeah, I should vote differently. I hope it leads to conversations about mental health, about drug policy, about what is a psychedelic, what is a drug, how does our country work, how do we look at people who have different behavioral and substance challenges, and diagnoses. Our diagnosis is important. How sure are we of these things? Um, and then also starting to question, well, if one type of drug that is prescribed regularly today has a huge side effect profile and works in 40% of the population, and another drug has a 70% effective rate and a much lower side effect profile, why are we not prescribing that one first? And just, I'm picking that as one example, but you can go into a lot of these drugs and hopefully spark some thought-provoking ideas on how things could be rearranged in our society.
And that dovetails nicely with the sort of next direction of questioning, which is, what are some challenges? Why do you think it might be that there's reticence around these proven safe and effective substances?
Yeah, I think anyone born 1971 to today, so I was born 72, I'm the heart of it. We lived our
Same.
entire lives in a prohibition.
Yeah,
The whole Just Say No campaign, the egg, the frying pan, that worked on me. I
yeah.
stayed very far away from drugs. I thought they were going to fry my brain. There's no medicinal use. So we have 50 years of propaganda that we were all fed, and we were fed from every direction. We were fed from our parents. We were fed propaganda from our teachers, from the news, from law enforcement. Everywhere we looked, it was, these are bad. And now all of a sudden, 309 academic institutions studying psychedelics, paper after paper after paper coming out, people looking at papers done from before the Controlled Substances Act of 1970. Again, what an incredible time that we get to live through, that this prohibition is lifting. And I think that also we have a population that is lonely, that is tired of this numbing, this symptom numbing, and the moral preaching, and is looking for something different. And we've had this tool that we've kind of ignored. We felt we don't need that. That was for the indigenous people, or the people, these tribes. That's not for us. And people are now saying, no, 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 we need something else, and there's something here.
Excellent. And could you go into a little detail on the sort of the context with indigenous populations, and maybe some of the ethical issues there?
Sure. So a couple things here, Eric. We start with what most of us in North America were taught in school. So we've known kind of Native Americans use peyote and maybe mescaline. We might have heard that more broadly, Wachuma, San Pedro. Maybe we learned about the Mayans and the Aztecs, and they were using something down there in Mexico. We're not exactly sure what, but it was some kind of psychedelic. Okay, great. Most of us were not taught about like the Siberian shaman, and their use of psychedelics. Most of us were not taught about the tribes in Africa and their use of psychedelics. Most of us were never connected the dots between many of the witches that were burned in Europe and their use of psychedelics. So we as a culture have a tendency to put psychedelics in an other category. These are an indigenous group, but it's not my lineage. And I
Mhm.
think that's wrong. I think with mushrooms growing all around the world, with psychedelic use being all around the world, we all have a psychedelic lineage. Now, that being said, we I believe we need to tread carefully and respectfully. We need to give thanks and appreciation for the elders and the wisdom keepers who have gone before us. We need to recognize that for 50 years of prohibition, those people didn't stop. There was still an underground indigenous spiritual community operating for this 50 years, and that needs to be acknowledged. Um, and then when it comes to things, and I'll use peyote as a very specific example, there's not enough peyote for the members of the Native American church. So when it comes to that particular sacrament, I think we have a responsibility to kind of not use that one unless we're invited in by a Native American church member. But there's plenty of other sacraments that we can have access to that doesn't impact a very specific church, a very specific lineage, and a very specific sacrament.
Thank you.
Does
So,
that make sense?
yeah, awareness, respect, equity, those are all great themes. And I'm wondering if, what currently, again, to pull back to the broader field, what's your biggest frustration right now with what keeps you up at night about, the psychedelic therapy right now? What's the biggest blocker that you see?
So Eric, a couple of things. First of all, I'm not I feel great about this time of life. I feel great about this state of the world. There are things that I'd like to see adjusted that will be adjusted, I believe, in time.
Mhm,
So as it comes to psychedelic therapy as an example, I believe there are practitioners who mean well, but may not have the all the information about kind of the tools that they're using.
mhm,
Um, I don't love the practitioners who are treating this just as a biochemical reaction and not as a biochemical, psychosocial, spiritual experience where
mhm,
all of that needs to be understood and needs to be held in the process. Um, but part of this issue, Eric, is what I was talking about before. Because we've had kind of this underground world, because we've had this split between science and spirituality, and science needs to be pure science and spiritual, and all of this, we haven't been able to practice neither medical nor spiritual with the best wisdom that is available today. And that's exciting that this wisdom is coming out and that people are saying, okay, I might be leading a spiritual church, but I really do need to do a medical intake, both for the safety of the participant and the safety of the community. I'm doing a church, but I really should do an informed consent to make sure that everybody really understands what they're getting into. I'm doing a medical experience, but maybe I should treat that more like ceremony and give people the comfort and allow them to experience those types of aspects from this. So there's is it frustrating? Is it being done perfectly now on either side across the board? No. And is there opportunity in both? Yes. And are we having these discussions more and more publicly? We are, and that's exciting.
So one of the things I love most about your work, your voice, is that it's always positive, it's always forward and engaging and workable. You don't tend to think in frames of what's wrong or problems per se, and that's not saying that you disregard them, but there's always this workable aspect, I think, to your from your perspective. Have you always been like that, or is that something that psychedelics has helped to develop, or just it's just interesting because I think it's a very helpful approach.
I appreciate that. I've definitely am a positive person, have been a positive person, but since psychedelics, I really understand differently this idea that there's only one direction to go. We're always learning, healing, and growing as we move forward. At some point, we die.
Mhm.
Everything in between, there's no failure. There's tasks that you might not succeed in. There's things that might um, be uncomfortable, but that's not failure. We're always moving forward. So I'm trying very hard to participate in every moment of moving forward and to see things clearly as we're all just moving forward. So when I see, so going back to your other question, when I see someone practicing in a way that I might not choose to practice, that's okay. That's where they needed to be at this moment of time. And they're attracting people to them who needed them at that moment in time. And it's okay. It's okay. Do I think there's ways we can do better? Sure. Do I think I know all those ways? Absolutely not. So it's yeah, I think there's you can live suffering is optional. We have this opportunity to live to make change, but we can do it all in a positive manner.
It's nice. You seem to embody the solution even with your work, you know, the combination of the spiritual, of the religious, and of the science. So I think it sets a wonderful, kind of example for folks as they approach this. So now we come to my favorite question in the world, which is wave a magic wand. What does
Hmm.
success look like for you, for the book, for the world, for psychedelics?
Well, I think success is all of us get to see the world for what it is, which is abundant and beautiful and full of love and full of there's enough for everybody. So I mean, that's the end. That's the ultimate end game.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and with that, we realize we're all connected. We are all just nature, just different forms of nature. What does it look like in terms of how we live? Yeah, I think it's the interconnectedness of all of us. I mean, it's less borders, it's less control, it's people not operating with a scarcity mindset. It's people not living their lives, their entire lives scared and full of doubt and full of guilt and full of these emotions that don't help them.
Mhm.
Um, and I'd love to see, more practically speaking, I'd like to see psychedelics legalized for a medical framework. I'd like to see them legalized, period, in regards to like decriminalization. And
Mhm.
I'd like to see them absolutely allowed to be used in churches across the country to help people with their spiritual connections. I don't know of any other technology that can help humans see the divine, see the connectivity, see that there is a higher power, see that there is a that they are loved and that they are enough in a way that psychedelics can do.
Excellent. Does that seems to relate to um, Doblin and sort of his approach of zero net trauma? Do you see your model and that model fitting well?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I think what Rick Doblin has done is just brilliant in many respects, and he has chosen to pursue this medical. Well, he's chosen multiple things. On face value, he's chosen to pursue a medical model for the legalization of MDMA in America, which is hugely an important thing to do. But he has certainly supported other efforts to have people get more access to psychedelics. And then he has also supported the conversation that goes with this, that what are the risks of being in non-ordinary states of consciousness? How do we not re-traumatize or add trauma to people when they're in these non-ordinary states? How do we do this safer? What does that mean? What does it mean for the people in the room? What does it mean for the questions in advance? What does it mean for the preparation? What does it mean for the integration? So he is doing a ton of different things on a variety of levels while absolutely moving forward on a medical model. And I think it's absolutely beautiful and brilliant what he's done. And the perseverance to do this for 30 years is just incredible.
Yeah, and that makes me think of people like Shulgin, who was inspired by mescaline to synthesize MDMA, and that I think that seems to be another kind of case study in what you're advocating, which is looking at the spiritual, looking at the natural and indigenous traditions, but then bringing them into science, and looking at ways like of even evolving some of the substances that we have access to. Um, do you? But Shulgin's work was then he was sort of vilified, right? There were a lot of sort of negative articles about MDMA and inventing this really sort of negative drug. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, I mean, vilified, honored, they're just constructs. What's the difference? All right, I love you. I don't like you. What's the difference to you? So he did brilliant work. He synthesized hundreds of different compounds. He published them, made brought so much information into the world. And were there people who said things about his work that were false? Sure. And they were misinformed. And that's okay. That's okay. He did what he needed to do while he was here. He moved it forward. He did his research. Yeah, I think that's beautiful. We have access. So one of the questions that I get a lot is like, oh well, this particular sacrament is natural, and this particular sacrament is man-made, and the man-made is not as good, or the natural is not as good, depending on which side of the equation you're on. Um, if we look at ourselves as nature, we're all just nature. So the fact that nature made nature, it's still nature. So I have a lot of room in my heart for the work that he's done. And I think cultures have used psychedelics that were available to them, and that's allowed different cultures in different parts of the world to use different sacraments. Um, we have in 2023, living here in North America, we have a lot of sacraments that are available to us. And I think any of them should be allowed to be used as sacraments because they are, and they can be.
Nice. And the sacrament aspect is, it seems like in your work, an essential aspect. It's not disposable. There's the science, but the sacrament, is that the most important element to you, or is that sort of an equally important facet to the science and and to the social aspects?
I think it's the most important aspect. I don't believe that there are cure-alls that exist for um, the emotional anguish that many of us experience. There is no pill that we're going to take that's going to truly make it all right. What we can do is have biochemical reactions that free us up to think in ways that we haven't thought, that free us up to potentially tamp down different aspects of how our system operates. But then we go through an experience, and we connect and we remember. And with that knowledge, we can then make behavioral change moving forward. So again, I subscribe to, I mean, like I live in Chapel Hill, and right up the street from us, there's a University of North Carolina received $26.9 million to study removing the hallucinogenic property from psychedelics. I maybe, but it doesn't feel that that's going to really get the human to understand what is the root of their challenges and how are they going to move forward and let that go and behave and understand differently. And I think again, it's not biochemical, it's biochemical, psychosocial, spiritual, everything working together.
Absolutely. I love that model. It's inspiring, and it seems to be, a great way forward. So, you know, I mean, first I want to have you let folks know about the book, how they can get in touch with you, how they can get the book. It's a bestseller. It's on Amazon, Psychedelics for Everyone. So please tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, anywhere that books are sold, you can pick up the book. It's also there is an audiobook where I read the parts that I wrote. A woman narrator reads the parts that women wrote. It's a nice way to digest the book as well. And then Beyond the Trip is available hardcover and soft cover depending on how you like journaling. Also on Amazon. And then for Beyond the Trip, a lot of retreats and ceremonies are asking for wholesale. And right on my site, there's a way that they can buy boxes at a time if they want to use it for their practice, whatever that is. And then I'm available. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, and I'm genuinely, if someone has a question, write me. I will get back to you with some answer. It might take me a minute, but I'll get back. I'm trying to provide be an accurate source of information. And if I can't help you, I will try to point you in the right direction, or in a direction that I think is a reasonable direction. And then you can decide for yourself if it's the right direction or not.
Hmm. Wonderful. And so, as a researcher, what I'm liking to do is sort of, cap these conversations with a question about questions. So,
Hmm.
what are like the two or three biggest questions you have that you'd be interested in seeing answers to about the field of psychedelic therapy?
Oh, that's interesting. Two or three questions about psychedelic therapy. Yeah, how can we, how, I guess the biggest question is how can we create a new framework um, to provide access to more people would be the fundamental question. That framework can then be subdivided. That would mean who delivers the experience and what are the qualifications needed, both
Mhm.
again, medically and spiritually. How do you change the cost structure for that access? And then how do you get all that information out there to help people do it in as the most risk reduced and human optimized manner?
Nice. That's lovely. That's a sort of a nested set of questions, and I think very, very important. And so that's something that we'll take a look at and maybe dig into and get back to you on. And possibly that could be the subject of some of your future work as well. So it's always good to, poetry is like a question. It's good to sort of finish on a nice open note. So I want to deeply thank you for your time, for the good work you're doing, for your great energy, and yes. So folks, please do reach out, check out Matt's work, and dig deeper. And as he said, you can get in touch directly, ask questions, or promote the book. It makes a great gift. And yeah, do you have any final thoughts for us today, Matt?
No, again, Eric, I appreciate what you're doing by even having this discussion and many more business oriented or market intelligence oriented pieces. It's we just want to deal with the markets, the capital, and the products. And I appreciate you introducing these concepts into this to your audience. So thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again, and we'll chat soon.
Sounds good, Eric. Thank you.